Okay, now there's one other subject that I find very interesting, and for a long time I dismissed it completely, as many of you, I'm sure, would be prone to dismiss it, and that has to do with psychologists. Of course, when I was in the church, psychologists were anathema. And it wasn't hard to justify it. Most of them really didn't seem to know what they were doing. And of course, we were taught to be very disdainful of psychologists and psychiatrists. Even though an important person in the field was Sergeant Bodie, who was a psychiatrist, but he never really practiced. And we have a couple of people, thinking specifically of Bruce Levin, who was a class auditor who went out and got a psychology degree so that he could be, quote, legitimate, unquote, which I didn't agree with, but he's gone and done that. But lately, there has been an interest in this stuff with psychologists. In fact, I have my book, Clearing, a Guide for Professionals. There's a single copy of it I brought. It's in the back. And Fred Gallo, who's a very prominent energy psychologist, it's tapping psychology, like non-verbal psychology that they're doing, EMDR, rapid eye movement, tapping along meridians, and this stuff. He is quite eminent, and I wrote a chapter in his book called Energy Psychology and Psychotherapy, and I wrote a chapter on the biomonitor. And I sent him a copy of my book, and he offered to do a foreword for the Clearing Guide. And I took him up on it, and he's very interested. And I sent him a copy of the virtual meter, and he wants to show this at an energy psychology conference in Heidelberg. Problem: I don't want him to show it if he doesn't know how to use it. I have sold some of these to people who are quite famous, and I just had a senior moment. Gary Craig bought one. I don't know if you follow energy psychology or tapping or any of that stuff. He bought one, and he wouldn't let me show him anything. He was going to figure it out himself. A few months later, he sold it. Yeah, but he's famous. So, I mean, I don't care about him as an individual. I mean, my God, a guy sits with you, for an hour and doesn't ask you a single question. This is not enlightened, in my opinion. But he gets up on the stage and he just exudes energy, and he has a lot of followers. And he's very good with this. It would have been nice if he learned how to do a simple thing with the meter, you see. So, I'm looking at stuff that I forgot to talk about. That's okay. He wants to show this, Miguel wants to show this at, did I mention his name, Fred Gallo? He wants to show this at a conference in Germany. I also have another psychologist who has had a few sessions, and he bought the meter, and he's sending me copies of his sessions, recordings of his sessions with clients, for me to critique. It's very difficult. It's very embarrassing. It's hard to be diplomatic. I'm very opinionated, and I like to get right to the point, and sometimes I'm not that diplomatic. And the fact is, these guys have no tech. Now, the energy psychologists do have a tech. They ask you to hold an issue in your mind, and while you're holding it in your mind, you move your eyes back and forth, or you tap on these meridians, or you tap your foot, or you hit one of those little rubber ball things on a paddle, and you hold the issue in your mind while you're doing that, and enough of the issue will as is, so the person will feel some relief. It's like asking a person to look at something until it reads, and you don't have to address anything, early or similar, nothing. You just look at it until it reads. It reads. Look at it again. It reads again. But not so much. Look at it again. It reads again. Look at it 4, 5, 6 times. It doesn't read anymore. In fact, if you're auditing by list and you blow the first time you ask the question, you blow the read, it might not read the second time because enough of it gets as is to get you into trouble. So you don't have any cognitive advantage there, but something blew. So that's what energy psychology is. It's kind of like an assist, But the guys who do talk therapy, in my experience, I'm hearing that there are some exceptions. I think Ken Urquhart told me about somebody that may be an exception. But by and large, these guys just let the client ramble. And if you listen to the session, the question is, what is it you're trying to handle? And how are you trying to handle it? He's talking, he's wasting your time and his money. And you can't say this to a guy who's in practice. So you've got to kind of give them something that's simple, that doesn't invalidate their reality or turn them against you. Give them something that they can get a win on. The other thing is, as we know, the meter reads first on your TRs and second on the person's case. And if the guy has the psychiatric habit of repeating everything the person says, then the TA starts going up because he's got lousy communication habits. And then he comes back and he says he can't get the meter to work on anything. And what do you do about that? I mean, what I used to do is say, thank you, I'll be happy to give you money. I didn't want to use it. Now, I'm trying to find ways beyond them, trying to share what we've got with these people by putting it in their own words. We have to talk about cortical stimulation, and they think it's all happening in the brain. Fine. Hubbard didn't have any problem with this until he got into political difficulties with these people. He was always able to deal with them and explain how it increases the blood flow and whatever it takes and get them to start using it. Eventually, I would hope they would learn. So, what they are looking for is an objective measure of progress for their own techniques. They don't want to learn your techniques or your modality or your paradigms about how the mind works. They've already got an investment in that, but they're looking for something to give them an objective way to do it other than ask the person, the client, on a scale of 1 to 10, is it better? And the client says, yeah, it's still better. And I've got the client on a meter, it's still reading. I mean, I would go and they'd say, well, thank you very much. I mean, it's the end of the session. You see? It worked. I've done this I had a person on people on meters in energy psychology conventions, and they run this thing, which is 20 minutes, which is too long for what they're accomplishing. And they ask the person on a scale of 1 to 10, called the SUDS scale, how much better is it? Well, it used to be a 2, now it's a 9. But very good. Okay. Could you tell us anything about what it was? Because she wouldn't tell you before. No, she still can't tell you. She still can't talk about it. And it's still reading on the meter. Thank you very much. You can sit down now. You're well. And we've got to get through this. Because these are the people who are in a position to help these poor guys who are coming back from Iraq, the PTSD people who are coming back psychotic and hanging themselves and beating their family. They're just totally dysfunctional. And this would be easy for us. But they won't let us in there, even as volunteers. Because it's a guild. They guard this market very carefully. So if you can show them how to use a meter, if you can show them how to do some kind of simple Dianetics, just undelivered communication, for Christ's sake, you see? And show them how to steer, and show them how to tell with a meter whether something is handled or whether it's not handled, and they need to keep working on it. I mean, this would be a big contribution to what's going on out there. So, like I said, we need to devise a simple set of protocols using psych jargon. There's a quick story about introducing technologies before their time. There's an icon that I have for this. His name was Hazarfen Ahmed Chalabi. He's not the idiot that the CIA put in charge of Iraq. Ahmed Chalabi lived in, I think, the 1600s. And I'm interested in airplanes flying. I had a conversation with a Turkish friend about heavier-than-air flight. I used to think that the first heavier-than-air flight was done in Al-Lili fall. He flew hang gliders in the 1800s. And my friend said, no, it was in Turkey. The guy jumped off the Galata Tower this time, and he went across this body of water. And I thought this was kind of urban legend, and I looked it up on the internet. Sure enough, a guy named Ahmed Chalabi studied flying, and he did a public demonstration, invited the Sultan to watch, Sultan Murad IV, and he very successful hang glider, as we call it now, flight across the body of water. Sultan went back to the palace after congratulating him, and the ministers told him, get rid of this guy. He's dangerous. If he can do that, he can do anything and you don't need him. Just get rid of him. Sultan had him arrested, exiled to Algeria. He died 30 years old or something. See? They could have had airplanes 50 years later. If they'd given this guy some money and materials and some personnel, they could have had aircraft that they could have used for surveillance and military. They could have had motorized aircraft. They could have had very sophisticated rockets. You see? And they just trashed it. For what, 300 years? 1600, 1700, 1800? Okay? Yes?
Anita wants to say something. I just want to ask you, just for the sake of time, this is really interesting.
Okay.
When, how the meter demos are going to work and how long that's probably going to take, because we were thinking that there's 2 more speakers, and I was thinking that maybe we should have the meter demos during the time that Mary's doing the ethics interviews, because she'll just be taking one person at a time.
Okay. Let me wrap this up and be about,
Yeah, just hold just a second.
Okay, so in other words, you'll get to that meter demo part, and we'll do that now?
not right now.
Oh, okay. Okay, do those later then.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me go over my immediate goals. What we foresee for this whole project. I'd like to see an ascendance of interest or a reemergence of interest in clearing. I'd like to show a way to handle PTSD, as you know what that is, traumatic incident reduction. Of course, I'm interested in improving meters. I'm interested in streamlining the internet tech. I'm especially interested in doing video instructions, like 10-minute instructions that we put up on YouTube for small things, how to handle an upset, how to handle pain, how to handle one thing, how to handle another thing, using the meter on YouTube. Everybody here familiar with YouTube? Yeah. We put 10-minute recordings there, and there's some incredible stuff there, and we should be there too. I want to introduce metering to healthcare, all kinds of healthcare, and I want to train more people. What I need to do this is staff and organization. Staff and organization is not a particular talent of mine. I started out as a craftsman. I didn't come into Scientology through the humanities. I came in as an instrument maker. The credo of an instrument maker is if you want something done right, you do it yourself. Well, that doesn't lead to much organization, right?